time to wrap up all of the books that I read in February. February was not as good of a reading month for me. I really tried to just take it easy, read stuff that I wanted to read. We did have one readathon in the month of February, which was Romantasy-a-thon. So much fun, and I did get a lot read during that week. But other than that, I just really took it chill and tried to have a good time and not be as competitive with my reading, and I think it worked out pretty well for me. Let's take a moment to thank the sponsor of today's video, Bellesa. I'm about to introduce you to some great fictional men, but if they are just not doing it for you, my friends and I at Bellesa are literally sending out free vibrators or free gift cards for vibrators to everyone who signs up for our giveaway. So like I said, if you're looking for something just a little bit more than the current fictional men in your life, I've got you covered. Bellesa was actually kind enough to give me a couple of different options to share with you guys, so there's literally something here for everyone, whether that be a man with wings or something a little bit more pink. This is the Pebble, and one of the best things about it is it just fits literally perfectly in your hand. It has no annoying patterns, and the suction and vibration are controlled completely independently. But if that's not really your thing, you're looking for something that's a little bit more subdued, we also have the Thump. It vibrates, it suctions, it thumps. This thing knows exactly what it's doing, even if your books don't. It actually uses Bellesa's new Pleasure Jet technology, so it's just amped it up a level. And then if you're looking for something a little bit more vibrant, but also something that comes in really discreet casing, which is one of the best things about all of these, is they all come packaged very discreetly, and when it showed up on my door, it was extremely discreet as well. But this one is the Air Vibe. It's waterproof, rechargeable, and silent, which means it's perfect for those times that you're in the mood for more of the discreet cover rather than the shirtless man cover. All three of these sound perfect for, like I said, when those fictional men just are not doing it for you, or when they're doing it for you really, really well. So don't forget to go enter our giveaway to win either a free vibrator or a free gift card for a vibrator. All the information is down below. So let's quickly talk about the numbers of how I did in February, and then we'll get into what I read. I read 11 books, so not quite as good as January, but still, like I said, I decided to take it a little more chill, and we had less days in the month of February. I read 5,210 pages, listened to 39 hours of audiobook. My average rating was a 3.9, you guys. I'm almost in my average rating being out of a 3, which is incredible. I was a very harsh rater last year, and I wanted to just try to let myself vibe and enjoy things and not be so critical that it kept me from enjoying books, and I think so far I'm off to a good start on that. I actually reread 2 books. I'm not normally a rereader, but this month was the month of rereads, and we'll talk about which ones of those and why here shortly. I started 3 series, which not ideal. Most of my books were audiobooks, but I read a decent amount of ebooks as well, so 6 audiobooks, 3 ebooks, and a mixture, so I read like physical and audio, or ebook and audio, for at least 2 of those. My ratings, I had 1 3-star, 3 3.5 stars, 5 4 stars, and 2 4.5 star reads in the month of February. That is incredible. I wish we'd gotten one quite to a 5-star, but you know what? I'll take it. It was amazing. Most of those were romantasy, unsurprised, and then I read 1 romance and 1 fantasy as well. I do want to up the fantasy and romance numbers a little bit. I actually have really been enjoying the romances that I've been reading, but I don't want to go too hard that I burn out. I also really want to try to get back into my fantasy era. I don't think I'm quite there yet, but I want to get there. The first book that I read in the month of February was a buddy read with Maria, Nikki, and Chris, and we all read The Embrace of Steel and Sorrow by K.L. DeVore. This is the prequel book to A Touch of Golden Madness, but you have to have read A Touch of Golden Madness before you go into reading this one, so you can't like read this one and then that. Even though it's a prequel, it will spoil things that happened in A Touch of Golden Madness. This one is following, like I said, events that happened prior to that book. I can't give you a really good synopsis of it because I will spoil A Touch of Golden Madness, but basically this is a world where we have kinetics and elemental magic, and it's a dystopian world. Things have happened. The kinetics and the elementals are at war. In this one, it is a little bit more of a secret if you're a kinetic or an elemental. Unfortunately, this one didn't hit for me the way A Touch of Golden Madness did. I actually gave that one a 4-star, but this one I think I ended up giving a 3-star. It was okay. Actually, probably, if I think about it too hard, I'll probably round it down because the writing in this was not my favorite. It was very like they're teenagers, but we want them to sound like adults, and it was just very repetitive. I felt like there was so much information redumped on you and barely expanded on from A Touch of Golden Madness that I didn't actually need this book. There were definitely some moments that were emotionally impactful. There were some sweet moments, things that I really wanted to see, but I felt like this could have been a novella, and I don't really see how she's going to make get its own trilogy alongside the main trilogy. For me, it just felt like I didn't get enough new information to make it stand on its own, and I think that was the biggest annoying thing for me. I also think this series is better served in audio. I don't notice as much of kind of like the writing issues when I'm listening to it, and unfortunately this one doesn't have an audiobook out yet. So I think that for me it was just okay, but I was expecting so much more from it that my expectations got me a little bit. I want to show you guys my little helper right now. Oh my gosh, he's so cute. We've gotten distracted by the kitty, but now we're moving on to Heartless by Elsie Silver. This is the second book in the Chestnut Springs series, the one romance that I read this month, and it's so much fun. You don't have to read these in order, but I do think you get to see some of the relationships from other characters form and grow in these books, so I am enjoying reading them in order. This one's following Cade, who is the grump. He is the eldest brother and the caretaker of Chestnut Springs, but he has a son and he is just really needing somebody to come take care of his kid, be their nanny. He wants to be there at all times, but unfortunately he can't be and he needs help. But because he is the most eligible bachelor, everybody is coming for him and not for his kid, and he is not okay with that. So one of our characters from Flawless says, "I know the perfect person for you," and she brings in her best friend Willa to be the nanny. They don't get along, they butt heads almost instantly. Two very strong personalities. Willa is very carefree and fun. Cade is a lot more strict and rigid, and the like clash of those personalities was so much fun. She writes a lot of single dads, and that's not a trope that I just absolutely love. I think it worked well in here. I think that it made sense for both of the characters. The kid was fun. It was definitely very sweet dad moments, but if that's not a trope that you like, maybe skip over this one. However, it does have really good banter in it. They were back and forth a lot, and I just really enjoyed their relationship. Elsie Silver does write very like sweet, relatively healthy relationships, and I will be completely honest, I need a little bit more drama sometimes, and so this one got a 4.5 star instead of a 5. It didn't quite hit all of the buttons for me that Flawless did. Cade and Willow were almost too self-aware to the point where it didn't feel as realistic to me at times, and so I did struggle with that. Obviously not enough not to thoroughly enjoy this book. I had the best time with it, but I do wish that we had had a little bit more like ability to have character growth throughout the story, because they almost felt like they had everything figured out. They just had to figure out each other from page 1, and I wanted to see them grow with one another. I read 2 books in a series. I reread The Reign of Shadow and Endings. This is following Tess, and she is a fae in a world where fae are basically servants to the legacies. The legacies are the descendants of gods, and they use fae in order to draw from their power, or they use them for other like menial tasks to keep things moving in the kingdom. She doesn't think she's going to be chosen to be the source of one of the founding families, but unfortunately during the choosing ceremony, there's one family that had not yet chosen, and he chooses her. So now she is bonded to this guy. She didn't know, she doesn't want anything from this, and the bond essentially makes them want to serve their legacy, and then the legacy can draw power from them. And there's a lot more to that relationship to Tessa. Things are not going the way they are supposed to go. So it's a lot of push and pull. There's a little bit of consent, non-consent in here. I really like the world building. Even though the relationship is toxic AF, it worked a lot better for me on reread. This is one of the ones that I did reread. I didn't love this book the first time I read it. I felt like Theon was very wishy-washy in his personality more than anything. He felt like he was flipping a coin constantly, and I just needed, I don't know, I wasn't quite on board with the way the bond was forcing Tessa to have feelings and then trying to make it a romance. However, when I reread it, I did try to physically read a decent bit of it, and I think that really helped me. I picked up on a lot more of the nuances, some of the things that I apparently either zoned out on or wasn't paying attention to that made me not feel the same way on reread. Theon had push and pull from his family members that he wasn't always this way, and you could see a little bit more of the turmoil with him and why his personality seemed to flip back and forth. And then Tessa and the bond, there was a lot more push and pull than I remembered there being. So I ended up giving this one, I think, a 4 or 4.5 star on reread. I really enjoyed it. And then I decided to pick up A Storm of Secrets and Sorrows, which is the second book in the series, and really enjoyed this one as well. I didn't like it quite as much as book 1. This one got a 4 star just because I wanted the plot to develop a little bit more. I felt like we were doing a lot of the similar things and didn't have quite as much character growth as I wanted there to be, but I still had a really good time with this. I love the world. I wish that the ending had been just a little bit different, but overall I'm so excited to move into book 3. I'm actually hoping to get to it in March if I can, because this series is just so good. Dark, but really good. Then we started off Romantasy-a-thon with The Reckoning, which is the third book in the Zodiac Academy series by the Twisted Sisters. Zodiac Academy is following sisters that are living in the human world when they find out that they actually are not humans. They are the heirs to this Fae throne, but in order to get their inheritance and their throne, they have to survive Zodiac Academy. We have 5 other guys who think that these heirs have been killed off and now they are going to be the heirs, and so they don't like the Vega twins coming in and trying to take back over, so they're gonna bully them out of this academy. It's bully romance, but it's a bully romance in a fun way. I didn't love book 1. It was definitely a little bit of a struggle for me trying to get into this more like silly goofy time, but I've really learned to embrace just the have fun vibes over the last year or two, and so book 2 worked a little bit better for me. Book 3, I think I was able to really appreciate what it was doing a little bit better. So even though it felt very repetitive and I feel like we're doing the same thing for every single book, I still was able to appreciate the story a little bit more, and this one actually got a 4-star from me. I do hope that book 4 really starts to expand the plot a little bit, though. It definitely does in the ending of this, but I want that to continue throughout the next book rather than us go back to that whole, we're gonna do the bully romance thing for the first 75% and then the ending is gonna have plot. I need it to be sprinkled throughout a little bit more because I don't know that I can read 9 books of the exact same thing over and over and over again, just waiting for the ending to push things forward. So I am hoping. If it doesn't, I may struggle a little bit. I heard book 3 is where things really took off, and I agree with that in that the ending took off, but the whole book just felt very similar to the other 2. So fingers crossed that the 4th book works a little bit better for me. It is on my March TBR, but I do want to go back and try to read a little bit of the series that comes before this before moving into it. Will I get the whole series read? Probably not, but I can at least try to get a little bit read. My next Romantasy-a-thon read was Speak of the Demon by Stasia Stark. This is very reminiscent of Angel's Blood by Nalini Singh. We've got our female main character who is a bounty hunter and she's working with the mages to try to take down demons, but this is a post-apocalyptic world, or at least a kind of post-apocalyptic world, where the demons and different creatures have come up from the underworld and are now have a treaty with the humans. It's still kind of rocky, like things are not perfect. Her mother was killed by a demon, and so she's using her position as a bounty hunter to try to gain more information to figure out who killed her mother. She gets involved in this plot where demons are being killed and she ends up bonded to the head demon. She has 2 weeks to figure out who is killing all of these other demons before she is bonded to him for life. This book is a lot of fun. It's very fast paced. It's got a sassy female main character, and I did enjoy my read of this, but I did struggle a little bit with the romance. It felt very like snap your fingers and he's obsessed with her and they're together, and I didn't have any lead up. It wasn't even insta love kind of lead up. It just felt like there and then here we are, and I'm hoping that there's a little bit of explanation given for that in the next books because I had fun with this, but it ended up getting a 3-star because it just never really felt connected to anything. I never really cared. So even though I enjoyed it, I needed to care. Does that make sense? I don't really know how to explain how I felt about this book because there are plenty of things that I enjoyed and plenty of things that I was like, this is not really working for me. So I think it ended up being a 3-star. I liked it, but I needed a lot more from it, and I wish I could pinpoint exactly what I needed, but I think it was all mostly in the romance. They just weren't together for a lot of the story. They weren't even, when I say together, I don't mean romantically together, I mean like literally in the same room. I needed them to have more interactions because I think if they'd had more interactions and banter, I would have enjoyed the story a lot more. So I think I'm going to move on to the second book in the series, hoping that they get more moments together, because if they do, I could really enjoy this, but I just was missing something in this book. Then I got to pick up Rebel Witch. This is the final book in the Heartless Hunter Crimson Moth duology. The first book I read last year and really enjoyed. This is a young adult series following a witch who is in disguise. She is a vigilante, and the witch hunter that thinks he knows what's going on, but he's going to try to seduce her to find out. The push and pull between them and Heartless Hunter was so good, and I loved the ending. It really like amped things up a lot. This book I also thoroughly enjoyed. I ended up giving it a 4-star because I think that it just moved a little too quickly for me. There was so much going on, so much happening, and sometimes the character motivations fell a little bit flat, but I think it's just because we didn't have enough time to explore them. I actually think this would have worked really well as a trilogy where we had a little bit more time, but the mutual pining in here, oh, so good, you guys, so good. I adored how the push and pull between them was happening. I know it frustrated some other people because this was the buddy read for my Patreon this month, and there were some people that were like, I hate how they can't make up their mind, and they're like, I'm with you one second and I'm not with you the next, and I was over here like, but the mutual pining, you guys. So I really enjoyed this one. I think the ending felt a little bit rushed for me, which is why it got a 4-star instead of a 5-star, but I just had the best time with this book. I really enjoy Kristen Cicerelli's writing style, and I cannot wait to see what she is going to write next. But either way, young adult, adult, new adult, whatever she writes next, I will absolutely be picking up. This one does start a little bit after where the first book ended, and it was a little jarring because there were some characters introduced and you were like, wait, who is that? So definitely be aware of that going in. No, you didn't forget people. She just literally drops you in, and we have some new characters introduced. So I went back and looked at recaps because I was like, what did I forget at the end of this book that this is where we're starting from? So there were some moments where I was like, we could have gone back in time a little bit, started at a point that made more sense, stretched things out some, and not try to feel so rushed, and this would have been a 5-star for me. Also read Servant of Earth for Romantasy-a-thon. This one got a 4.5 star. I thoroughly enjoyed this book. This feels more fantasy romance to me, where the fantasy is a lot stronger, but there definitely is a romance, a little bit of a love triangle going on in here. I didn't expect to love this book. I expected to enjoy it because other people that I knew that had read it also really enjoyed it, but this was such a surprise for me. When we started off, it was a little bit slow. It's following Kenna, and she lives in kind of this outskirt village where there are fae, but they just basically hear about them. They don't actually see the fae, except for once every, I don't remember how many years, 4 people are chosen to go be in service to the fae. It's considered to be this great honor, and in return the fae help protect them from the surrounding like creatures in the land. And she always goes out into the bog to try to find things to sell on the market to keep herself and her best friend alive, to keep food on the table. When her friend is selected and she says, okay, well then I'm gonna go with you, I'm gonna escort you there because we can't be separated, and she ends up in service to the Earth Court. She is now required to help the daughter of the mistress of the Earth Court survive these trials that essentially allow them to have their powers if they succeed. If they don't succeed, it could mean death. So there are a lot of trials in here. There's a little bit of politics. There's a brewing rebellion, and it just had so many buzzwords for me. We had a voice in the head, we had a sentient weapon, we had trials, we had found family, we had a love triangle. Like, I ate this book up. The beginning was a little bit slow for me, but once she got to the world of the fae and kind of in that Earth Court and everything started happening, you guys, I thoroughly recommend this, especially if you're somebody that likes fantasy, you liked like Serpent and the Wings of Night type of romance. Yes, now the romance in this is not as good as Serpent and the Wings of Night, but it does have that kind of like similar trials fantasy aspect. Don't go in this expecting Rain and Araya because it's definitely not that, but I still really enjoyed the romantic aspects to this. I think that the push and pull is going to be really good, especially in book 2. So excited to read the second book in the series. My last book of Romantasy-a-thon, I decided to step out of my comfort zone and read Rabid by Ivy Asher and Raven Kennedy. This was my first ever Omegaverse. It is about a girl who lives in a pack of wolves in a modern day world, and she is going to be bonded to her wolf. So they are like not born with the spirit of the wolves inside of them. They get to a certain age and then they go through like this ceremony. Her mother has died, and her mother's always kind of been her protector, and now the leader of the pack has decided that he wants her and he is going to force himself on her to make that happen. Check trigger warnings, this book starts off extremely dark, but when our lead gets her wolf inside of her, the wolf rages and basically takes over and tries to get her out of this really bad situation. It creates a little bit of a disconnect between the two of them, and she is considered rabid. So she ends up with this other pack, and I just kind of will leave it at that. This is a standalone set in a series of standalones, so I haven't read anything else, and I don't plan to read anything else in this series, but I liked this. I was surprised of how much I did enjoy it. The writing was really good. It's extremely smutty, and I think that I wanted a little bit more push and pull between the female lead and her love interest, her mate, because I think that part of the fun of like the chase of getting someone is to see the chase, and that part was very short, and I wish that we had seen a little bit more of that. I don't mind people end up being mates and like how that kind of came about because it makes sense in the context of like wolves and shifters, but I just wanted there to be a lot more push and pull and banter because the switch flipped a little bit too quickly for me. This did have my first nodding scene in it, and I'm not sure how I feel about it. I wasn't as weirded out as I thought I would be, but I don't know that this is going to be the kink for me. I may try another Omegaverse in the future, but I don't know that it's something I'm going to be like actively seeking out at the moment, but also I didn't hate it. It got a 3.5 star. And then I moved on from Romantasy-a-thon to 2 books that I finished off this month with, which you guys may or may not have already seen the vlog for yet. One of them was my reread of the song Rising by Samantha Shannon. This is the 3rd book in the Bone Season series. Bone Season is following Paige Mahoney. She is an unnatural, a clairvoyant, and the Scion, are the humans, have basically taken over and they are petrified of the unnaturals. And so they are out to eliminate them, to wipe them off the face of the earth. But Paige is part of the criminal underground, and she's like the second hand to Jackson. In the Bone Season, she is taken and sent to this like camp essentially. Finds out there's a lot more going on than she ever thought, and meets a guy named Warden in the process. This is very revolution, rebellion, heavily political story, and I really enjoyed my first read through these. This was actually my second favorite the first time I read it. Unfortunately, on reread, it is coming down a 1/2 star because while I really enjoyed the ending to this and felt like the second half picked up and moved the plot forward, and even though Paige was being a little bit ridiculous in some of her decision making, it made sense for her character and I liked how things were progressing. The first half was extremely slow. These books are kind of like move the chess pieces and things are going to start happening kind of books. And while I enjoy that, I do need there to be, like, I need to see the consequences of the moving chess pieces, and it took a while to get to that point. And when I read it the first time, I think my review was basically that things really started to happen. We got good character development, and I agree with that. But I think in this one, my memory was clouded a little and I was expecting more from it. And so it's going to pull down just a 1/2 star on reread. I'm still going to consider this a 4-star read because like 1/2 star isn't drastic enough for me to go, no, this was a 3-star book. But I just wish that I had felt as connected as I did the first time. Was that me or the book? I don't know. I was trying to take it easy this week before Ramadan started, but I am excited to move into The Mask Falling because that was by far my favorite of the 4 that I have read. It was a 5-star read. I remember being gutted, and so I'm hoping I get those same feelings from The Mask Falling before moving into Dark Mirror, which actually just came out, and I'm very excited to see how that's going to continue. And last but not least, I read Throne of Ice and Blood by Marianne Blackwood. This is the sequel to Empire of Flame and Thorns. I also buddy read this with the same group that did Embrace of Steel and Sorrows, and we had a lot of fun with this one as well. I fell way behind on the buddy read, but Empire of Flame and Thorns is about Selena, who is a fae, and the fae in this one are also slaves, but to dragon shifters now. They're not really slaves, but they're very like low in the totem pole. The dragon shifters run the world because they blame the fae for imprisoning the dragon shifters millennia ago, and so they are now like, I am not going to be demoted, I'm not going to be collared and forced into my dragon form. There is a rebellion that Selena is a part of, and she is determined to be more. She wants to have more of a role in it. She has emotion magic, and so people don't really trust her because they always feel like maybe she is manipulating their emotions, and in order to try to gain the upper hand, to get a little bit more involved in this rebellion, she decides to enter into the atonement trials, which happen every 100 years. The winner is said to get freedom from their lands and be able to go off and go wherever they want away from the dragon shifters. And she's like, if I'm able to do this, then I'm going to be able to get out there and carry information and really like be helpful for the rebellion. So she enters, but before she gets there, she ends up throwing a drink and embarrassing Draven, who is one of the like leaders of the dragon shifters. And so now he's out to get her. He's determined he is not going to let her win the atonement trials, and he sabotages her every step of the way. The banter in that one was so good. The like slow burn, I really enjoyed it. I actually gave it 5-star because vibes, but the writing left a little bit to be desired. I really liked the way it ended, so I was super excited to pick up A Throne of Ice and Blood. But A Throne of Ice and Blood, while I still really enjoyed it, didn't quite hit the same buttons that Empire did, and I don't know if it's because it tried to be more serious. We still have a lot of the banter, but not quite as much as we did before, and it definitely was a lot smuttier. And even though I don't mind smut scenes, I want them to have impact on the story, and it felt like the author was like, oh, well, they're kind of together now, so we need to throw in a smut scene here, and we need to throw in a smut scene there. And I needed them to be not toned back for the sake of being toned back, but I just needed them to be a little more impactful, I think. But Draven, still incredible, still loved their romance and their banter when we had it, but we definitely had a little bit more, like, that was not as much of the focus, their banter and the two of them. We have more plot going on, which was great, but the writing definitely shows up a little bit more in the plot. We have a lot of repetitiveness, and I don't know, it bugged me a little bit more in this one. So I think it ended up getting more of a 4-star. I still really enjoyed it, but the things that didn't bother me in the first book definitely started to bother me a little bit more in the second. However, I still enjoy our characters so much in the banter between them that it ended up getting a 4-star from me. So those are all of the books that I read in February. Thank you guys so very much for hanging out. I hope you had grabbed your popcorn and your drinks because I didn't mean to be here for this long, but we were sad. If you guys just want to let me know that you were here and hanging out. Leave me we're gonna think of a random emoji. What is something random? Okay, not as random, but I see a dragon and we just talked about dragon shifter. So leave me a dragon emoji down in the comments below. If you want to check out my Romantasy-a-thon vlogs, I will leave a couple of them up here. As always, thank you guys so very much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!